Are you going to a sector, regional, or galactic championship and looking for a different goal to set for yourself? Or maybe JTL didn't have one of your favorite leaders and you'd really rather play one of the old ones that you've kind of grown accustomed to. What's up, guys? KTOD Matty here, hitting you with my villain off meta go win a showcase video. If you haven't seen it already, I've done one of these for the hero leaders, and now it's time to do the villain ones for all our bad boys and girls in the chat watching the video. We're gonna talk Vader showcase. That's obvious in the thumbnail. Well, the other two leaders are obvious in the thumbnail, but like the last video, we'll talk about 5 leaders. I'll have honorable mentions because there's just so many good ones. We'll take a dig at the showcase art and see some of the ones that I really like that maybe aren't on my radar to play, but if you crack them, I'd love to hear about it. Let's go. All right, so first we're going to do is start with the honorable mentions. And the first honorable mention is going to go to... which one do you think it would be? I mean, art-wise, I'm really liking Maul. Not so much Yoda, but this is a villain video. Not so much pre-Vizsla. It's going to Count Dooku. I think Count Dooku is one of those leaders that we thought was going to really impact the meta. Exploit looked so good, and it really kind of fell flat. And I think a lot of that had to do with... number one, the later deploy was just getting eaten up by Hans. And then also, I don't think it had the complete tools to deal with Sabine. If they kept you off a big unit, they could just they could make your barrage pretty anemic, and you couldn't hang. But I think Dooku, and I'm gonna try to zoom in here on this sweet art. I think the Dooku showcase is pretty hot. Like, I think he looks dignified. I think he looks pretty badass. And one thing that I'm really noticing that I want to try to do in this new meta, we've gotten a lot of steely cards. We've got Commandeer. Commandeer's huge. And we did get a new kind of like traitorous, but for ships, which I think could be good depending on where the meta shakes out if it does hit, because I think it doesn't have to follow the same rules as traitorous, right? It just has its own. But I've been building this really fun Steal and Sack Dooku. For those in the Discord, you already know about it. And so what you're doing here is you are using Commandeer, Change of Heart, and things like traitorous to take something from your opponent, hit him with it, and then sack it to exploit. And more on this kind of tactic later when I talk about Palp. He's obviously someone can do it as well. What you need to do when you're doing that is you need to sandbag a 2-drop. And so I'm toying with that. And also the droid vultures, because it's a 2-drop. So you take the thing, you exploit, you have the 2-drop. It's a little bit cumbersome in terms of you need multiple cards, but when you already have the 2-drop droid, it's kind of easy there. I would say the yellow version that I'm coming up with isn't the best shell for the droid version. You kind of run out of steam, but there is a really good droid version either in the mono green, and you can play stuff like I wouldn't say what's the old unit, attack pattern delta. You can kind of play some pumps there. The problem with going swarm right now, though, why this is only honorable mention in my book, is that FFG printed War Juggernaut, and War Juggernaut is kind of insane that it hits both arenas and taps everything down. So that is a little bit of a challenge. Another thing that I want to talk about with some of these more expensive leaders is, there's some new bases, right, that came out, and we'll touch more on this later, but I'm okay saying, you know what, this might be the week that I just got to dodge Han and playing one of these more expensive leaders and going with a higher base total. But we'll talk about that more when we get to Pal. Okay, so that's number 1. All right, and my second honorable mention is kind of, I would say it's like cheating a little bit, because it's number 1, it's not just one, and number 2, I don't think these are necessarily off meta. I think Cad Bane, number one, look at that showcase. Absolutely insane. I think Cad Bane is going to be good in this meta. So this is an off-meta video. I'm not including Cad Bane, but Cad Bane is in my short list of decks that I would play in the upcoming sectors coming up. Upcoming sectors coming up. I need to drink more of my coffee. And then the second leader that I think could make a splash and is also not very off-meta is Kira. We saw Kira get some success at the end of the last PQ season, kind of figuring out a way to quote-unquote flip the Jango matchup. I think Jango has some more tools now. Things get a little scarier, but I think that someone is going to figure out the right weekend and the right card configuration to play Kira and really kind of pop off. And I would like every meta I would recheck with her because I think her ability is so strong. And then just for funsies, I love Smuggle. I love Hondo. I think you could run a pretty mean yellow Hondo, playing some more of these shieldy boys. Like I know Dr. E is very risk reward, but I've been having some success in other decks just going for it with him and like insulating yourself with the shields, and then putting a blaster on Dr. E. You can get kind of cooking. That's pretty sweet. So those are my honorable mentions. I'm trying not to make this video 8 million years long, but man, I mean, if there's not a time to win a showcase, I would say going for one of these older leaders makes a lot of sense because there's so many more showcases in the new set anyway, so it's a little more value to go for some of the older ones. But now we'll get into the main three. First one up I'm going to talk about is Gar Saxon. I mean, this is a pretty mean showcase. I love the showcases that have the light art. I think it just like pops way more in my opinion than some of the dark arts, although I do love me the Palp one. We'll obviously get to that. But one thing that really kind of like Gar was seeing some success at the end of the last meta. Shout out to Gandork. I think you were crushing it a little bit with Gar Yellow. And so, one thing that is becoming very apparent, and I already mentioned, is like shields are just so important right now in insulating yourself from that ping Tarkin down play. I mean, Cad, Quinlan, Jango, all really rely on that early play. Jango is just so freaking good right now that I don't think it relies on it as much. But it is really a huge way that they get ahead. So being able to kind of insulate yourself from that is just so important to like get the ball rolling and get something going for yourself. And then, if you're able to survive that early play, you can put a jetpack back on somebody, get that shield rolling. You can use Iden in the new shuttle card. And so just like looking at all of the cards available, and I love Swooty B. I don't even think these are all, some of the coding can be off. Like, I don't even think these are all of the shielded ones. I'd have to double check, but like you have Crafty, Krennic, and Dr. E that you can all start. That's 3, 6, 9 double shieldy boys. Bib, if you really want to get there, like you're starting the game just insulated. I think that's so important. And then you get to come around and put a blaster on it, and then you're just whacking them for 4 or 5 like right away. 5 or 6. Let's see. Dr. E. No, because there's only one upgrade. This is early morning unedited Matty. But you're getting off to a really hot start, and so I think that blue yellow is such a good power combo because then you get to decide like, how do I want to round out my deck? And so you can round out your deck with removal, or you can round out your deck with some of this tempo stuff. And so, not to go like absolute talking head, video, your options I think are just so insane. Like, are we just needing to EMP to race, kind of this tap thing? I personally think No Good To Me Dead is in one of the best spots it's ever been in. With the leaders that are going on, the pilot leaders, like that is such a sync. It's it's akin to doing it to lightsaber or dark saber Sabine, right? So you have the ability to use that the yellow villain tempo cards, but then you get the new removal, the 5-drop steal and sack, and obviously Commandeer is at one of its best spots. So I I think that Gar is in such an interesting spot, not only with the shielded units, but some of these tempo pieces. And looking at what JTL got them, one card that I think people are starting to realize is really good and interesting is covering the wing. You're number one. You're creating a unit that you can then upgrade later, and you're giving something an upgrade. You're insulating it. That's like my new favorite word, coming out of the winter, right? So you have covering the wing, and then you have an old favorite in Asteroid Sanctuary as well. So you have these options here of getting a shield and getting something else for relatively cheap. So Gar is my first one. I think it is very good. I think it could become meta. So I think I might be cheating a little bit, but it really hasn't had a high percentage rate. So I think that that's not like saying, okay, go play CAD, which again would be a little more meta. And just before we get into our next leader, just to touch on something real quick. The reason this is an off meta video is when you're trying to get a top 64 at one of these sectors or regionals, you want to give yourself the best chance while also playing something pretty good, right? So that's why it's like, how do we get a little different? How do we play something that's strong that other people won't be playing so we can go spike that showcase? Obviously, like, some showcases aren't going to be the most expensive, so maybe it's a fun goal for someone this is their first TCG, this is their first sectors, and they're like, all right, let's onboard myself to this competitive process rather than, I'm going for the dub. I want to see how well I can take this deck. And so it's a video and a goal set for newer people. And we are seeing a lot of new people into TCGs come into Star Wars Unlimited. So, and like, while we're a competitive Discord community, I think that's a completely reasonable goal to go to a sectors and try to win a showcase. I think it's fun. Frankly, I'm probably going to do it at one of the ones I go to as a little challenge to myself. All right, and the next one we have the first showcase I ever pulled, near and dear to my heart, Palp Daddy. Man, Emperor Palpatine has been one of those leaders that, I mean, look at this showcase, dude. He's like the freaking, he looks so cool. He's chilling. He's one of those leaders that, like, you kind of forget about him, at least earlier in the meta. I think last PQ season, maybe not so much, but you'd like forget about him, and then there'd be like Palp Week and Palp, early on in, I think, set 3 PQs, he spiked some tournaments, and then, kind of later on, he got a little sneaky on the back of, I think, some of the yellow Palp stuff. But in JTL, we got some new bases. And so whenever you kind of have a big change, like you got to really look at that. And so, hold on one second. Boom. Okay. So we got some new bases here. You can see one of my decks. So for all you not in the Discord, you can kind of take a peek. We got Colossus. Obviously, this is a yellow deck, so that's not going to fly. But okay. If anyone is to take advantage personally of Colossus, you got to look at Palp. And so we have a late deploy leader. Man, this Zoom isn't amazing. Draw one less than your starting hand. We have a late deploy leader. So, naturally, if your leader takes longer to come out, more health is going to help you get there, right? And then we have Palp, who draws cards. So not necessarily as hurt by having 5 cards in hand. I think that if you're trying to play blue-green Palp, I don't know why you wouldn't start here, knowing that you need to address some certain matchups. You need to address your Quinlan matchup. And who else plays a lot of discard? Is it just Quinlan that plays the most discard? Hit me in the comments. Oh, that's what I wanted to say earlier. Hit me in the comments. What deck besides Quinlan has scary discard? And 2, which showcase art are you going to be playing for, or you think that I should have given a little more love to? But anyway, you have a late deploy, you have a leader that draws. We're trying Colossus, right? So I think that is a reason to revisit Palp if you kind of found that blue green Palp wasn't cutting it in the past. And then we have Data Vault, and I'll talk more about Data Vault later, but I think this is the main point. We have more health, but now we have more cards in our deck, which can be scary. However, In double green, we have command. And then in regular green, we have resupply, super laser tech, and now the new 6-drop ramp shippy. And so, I mean, there's ones later than that, like the ambush ship and stuff like that. We have access to more ramp in double green. So you can do the math. And there's a video that came out. People in the Discord have been linking it that breaks down some of the math. And there's, there's some nuance there. But double green, you have access to an extra, ramp card. So the math might not necessarily hurt you. And because you're drawing cards, you're going to be able to get through your deck a little bit later. And for the memes, everyone overseas loves playing more than 50 cards already. You're halfway there. Why don't you add a few more and get a few hit points better? So you have 2 new bases. That's why we would revisit. That can help pair with Palp very well. And you say to me, well, what about Han 1? Well, some matchups you just got to dodge. And that would be one to look at. And then I already mentioned it and kind of showed my hand a little bit, but I think that like yellow Underworld Dooku using, like McClunky and some of this stuff early, help you along in the early game, and then very powerful abilities, Change of Heart with Palp and Commandeer with Palp, is a really interesting way to play the game. Take their thing and sack it. It's not as easy as Dooku in terms of, like you need an extra resource, but you could try Bib. That's one thing we've been talking about in the yellow Palp deck thread. Most of these decks, Gar has a really vibrant deck thread. Yellow Palp has a pretty solid one. So if you haven't checked out our Discord and are looking to actively engage with more people about the game in a competitive community, I would really consider checking out at least our lowest tier of Patreon support, because our deck threads are like so cool to see everyone collaborate. And like, I just pulled a Von Reg showcase. I've streamed a Carbo opening, and I've been playing some Von Reg, and I just went in the deck thread and people were showing me what they've been cooking and talking about it, and we've been chumming it up. So it's just like a fun way to kind of bounce ideas off of people. But anyway, that's Palp. Palp is one of my, I'm considering playing Palp. I already have the showcase. I'm considering playing Palp if I want to be competitive. I think that yellow Palp deck is sneaky good. And I think you have some really good options. So Palp could be meta soon, maybe. All right, and last but not least, the obvious one that I know a lot of people will be hunting for because it's going to be so rare is the Vader showcase. I mean, this thing is absolutely insane. And it's going to be super rare. So like if if you're a Vader stan or somebody who's a little bit more into the collecting side of things, I think we're not going to see too many of these. What's it, like one an event, unless it's part of like a prize wall or something that I'm not familiar with. Vader is going to be kind of a chase card in the future. So a complete one, probably a more competitive one than say, Count Dooku, which was on the honorable mentions, or even Gar. I think there will be a meta share, and I think that's a really cool thing. And I harped on it a bit in the first video. I think it's a really cool thing that FFG did. And so some of my same points are really going to apply with Vader. I think that you can look at the new bases to get you out there. Like I know that Loopy from Late Night Gaming has really been honing a Data Vault version. And Red Green Villain was something that we saw early in the meta. I top forward an early 1K with it, kind of at the end of set 1 meta. It was just a week to play it. And I had really good success, even beating some Sabines, which is like a really hard matchup. And so like the power levels there. I think Mike also beat Vader in the finals of a 1K in Connecticut very early on with Boba Yellow, which is a very hard matchup. He crushed that. He played so well. It was insane. We definitely, he earned the drinks that we consumed later because he played so good. But so you have that green red version, right? That the typical ramp, play play the new Devastator, and that's the fun thing. You come into the new set with ramp, and you can play Devastator. You can play your Vaders. This is a mock-up, just a quick mock-up of a version. You'd play Data Vault, and you're not as exactly like the ping is kind of whittling things down, getting them in range of when you play your big stuff, right? And this is not a deck list video, so it's not really about that. But the one thing with Vader's ping is it's going to take you a little while to finish off the opponents, but it can add up with things like indirect damage, making some tough choices, and then when you do drop your big bomb, you've already kind of done some damage to them. And that's a thing that we talk about is like, how do you turn the corner? Like some decks can kind of stall out the game, but the end is inevitable. It's like you get to a position where you don't have enough actions or resources to win the game, but you've stalled them out to where like, if you could just turn the corner, you could flip the matchup. And so Vader's ability can help you do that a little bit more because number one, and I've said this in past videos talking about him in set 1. If you go back and like hit, KTOD oldest, you'll find some of my videos on Vader that were, man, they really popped. And so like going back to the past, seeing some of those ideas and then take them to the future would be my suggestion for if you want to take on Vader. But Vader is a bomb in and of himself. So playing him and his lightsaber, just getting to 7 resources, making sure you survive to that. You have a built-in bomb that you can do every time, and then the ping and some of the indirect damage stuff, like with General Pride and maybe a TIE Bomber, TBD. It's obviously has its pros and cons. Pairing that, adding in the pings, it can add up to where you only need to attack with him twice in conjunction with some of the other things you have going on. Obviously, if you're going to be playing Vader, red-green, a tough matchup could be like some of the Piet stuff. So I would say like when you're onboarding yourself to that deck, keep that in mind. Piet was an early dog for like best new deck, and people were having some trouble. I think people are starting to figure Piet out a little better, but I still think it'll be a pretty good meta share because it's strong and it's linear with clear objectives. So I think the chance to make mistakes is probably a little lower. So the average player should get more out of the deck than something that's a little more decision branchy and which could lead to more mistakes. And then talking about the deck threads, we have a very small but very passionate community of Tarkin Town Vader mono red players. And that's a deck that I put together at the end of set 1 as well. And it's been really cool to see, like I remember I put it together, played some games, CJ ran with it and made his own version, and then like that was like a thing for a little while, and it kind of fell on the wayside, and then I heard of players doing well in PQ's last set with it, and I think that's so cool to see like other people either carry the torch or find the deck on their own and really champion it. And so definitely take a peek at Mono Red. I mean, Mono Red has some really good tools. I think aggression is doubly good now, and for the reason that number one, upgrades are coming around, right? But number two, the untap can be really potent as well. Like Django tapped something down, they accounted for that. You can untap it, right? And you can also just do more damage. So aggression stocks on the rise. Get them now if you haven't. I think someone's gonna figure out Mono Red. I mean the new fire spray. It's a little, I would say, like perfect world, but like the new fire spray attacks and then readies, and that could be absolutely insane. It's just you got to get to 7 resources, but you could with Ping Tarkin Town so early with Vader. One of the things that I said in the early like Vader video was like, it's hard to get to 7 without ramp, but if you're just killing everything and putting on the pressure and they have to kind of focus on you, it becomes a lot easier. I think obviously you just got to figure out the Django matchup there. You're not as insulated by shield, so you really need to just start throwing stuff at them. But I think that's a really exciting option as well. So I would say look at Data Vault or just regular 30 if the math doesn't support Data Vault for you. Look at Mono Red Tarkin Town. Get in the thread with Easy E and the boys. and get cooking. I think they've been like very easy to share what they've got going on because they want like more people passionate about it. So definitely consider that. That is a cool one. And then you could even try, I don't know about Colossus Vader, but you could come back to, the old Avenger Vader that George and Guy ran back in Florida early set one. It's kind of funny to talk about the history of the game 1 year in, but that feels like so long ago. But yeah, Vader Showcase, going to be competitive. I think there's a lot of different angles to go for it. And it's just really exciting to see what people cook up. I can't wait to like stalk the top 64 and see like what version of each deck won a showcase. Who came in 64th with Hondo Yellow and snuck in a showcase. I think that'd be really fun. So yeah, that's it for me on this topic. I hope you guys liked it. Hit me in the comments with some of your ideas. I'd love to hear them. Like, it's all about collaborative. We talk about a lot of, getting people in the Discord, but there's you YouTube people too, and I love to hear from you as well. Like, just loving it all, baby. Swoo.